I won't necessarily get this in order, but if we want to look at the portrayal of witches in the movies, if we look at the very first film that was made about a witch, we talked about this a little bit in our chat the other day. It was in 1922 out of Sweden. It was called Häxan, which means witchcraft, and it was a black and white film. It was a silent film that had some music to it, music track added, and it was about this. It sort of explored all these sort of very witchy stereotypes that came out of the Middle Ages, and the portrayals of witchcraft folklore. Some of them are from Scandinavia also. Or something just, oh, there's screen sharing. Oh, there it is. Great, thank you. I was going to put together a little, PowerPoint with pictures, but I didn't. So thanks for doing that. So the portrayal of this witch, she's very, very ugly. She's very, very evil. She does terrible things, and she is sort of vanquished in the end as a bad person. The next portrayal we see that becomes popularized is the Wizard of Oz that you were just talking about. In the Wizard of Oz, we also have a witch who's very ugly. She has bright green skin. The green skin, by the way, this became really popularized with the Wizard of Oz, but that comes from paintings by Goya, a Spanish painter. And so he has sort of 16th century, 17th century paintings of witches. Some of them had green skin. So that it sort of evolved a little bit out of that. But we have this witch who is extremely jealous of a young woman on the cusp of sexual maturity. And the symbol of that sexual maturity is these ruby red slippers. This is a sort of euphemism for menstruation, for sexuality. We have this young nubile woman. She even has red hair, bright red lips. She has the blue gingham pinafore. This is all about color symbolism. The blue symbolizes kind of like the Virgin Mary. It symbolizes innocence and purity. And green in cinema, that shade of green tends to represent the outsider or some kind of alien presence. Sometimes in cinema, green represents nature. But we have this battle basically over the power contained in these ruby slippers, which represent feminine, youthful vitality, which is something that the older witch no longer has and desperately wants. And that's why Dorothy is gifted with this. And it's a sort of a battle between the two of them. So Bell, Book and Candle came along in the 1950s, but I think we had some other, Hollywood-based witchy movies that came along that often would portray women as sort of evil. Bewitched, of course, came along in black and white. And then, I Married a Witch, really gorgeous film. Again, this idea of the witch is the femme fatale. So Hollywood, of course, is interested in things that are very, very dramatic and that establish a lot of conflict, but they're also interested in sexuality. Because sexuality, people really want to see beautiful, sexy people falling in love and doing things. So when the idea of the witch as this beautiful, seductive being who, she tempted men and she kind of would get what she wanted with magic and witchcraft, and she was incredibly beautiful. No man can resist her. I was in Fritz Leiber's Conjure Wife as well, this idea that you would be married to a woman who was a witch, and that marriage was sometimes the thing that took the witch's power away. So Samantha in Bewitched struggled with that. We saw that in Bell, Book and Candle, this idea that if a woman marries a man, she loses her powers. And it's in I Married a Witch, and this idea that men, a witch on her own can keep her power, but as soon as a woman is, there's a sexual union with a man, that can sometimes take the power away. This is a trope we see repeated in a lot of different witchcraft stories. In the 1960s and 70s, when we have the dawn of the women's liberation movement and, women's rights, we start to see portrayals of women as witches that are highly sexualized, but in a way that's more positive. This idea that women can take control of their sexuality, and also they can be witches. And of course, we had the actual witchcraft movement happening in the United States at the time and in England. So we have a couple of things happening in the 60s and 70s. We have women as witches who are fully sexual, autonomous beings, but also we have women who are in league with the devil, actually with Satan. So we kind of come full circle, and suddenly in the 60s and 70s, the witches are like medieval witches again. They're kissing the devil's behind. They want to kneel at the Dark Lord's, phallic altar. So all the satanic witchcraft cinematic movement is really fascinating to me. There's a lot of terrible movies that came out of it, but also really interesting ones. And what's going on there is this, I think, a cultural struggle, you know, and also because filmmaking was still very much a male-dominated art at that time. The portrayals of women as witches in the 60s and 70s, even if they were portrayed as contemporary women, they were still not allowed to be sexually autonomous. They still had to be, you know, controlled by the devil, or they were seduced by the devil, and that's why they were practicing witchcraft, or they were totally victimized, like Rosemary's Baby, where you have this woman who is an amazing film, a film that changed everything. And I just briefly need to say about Rosemary's Baby that Rosemary's Baby is single-handedly responsible for the rise of the satanic panic in the United States. And every testimonial from any person who claimed to be a victim of satanic ritual abuse or in a coven that impregnated women and then sacrificed the babies to the devil and buried them under the floorboards, to the point where these rumors were so widespread that the FBI established a task force to investigate it and found nothing. But every single one of those testimonials could be describing the scene in Rosemary's Baby where Rosemary has a dream that she's being impregnated by the devil. There's naked old people, they're standing in a circle, they're chanting and singing, there's candles, you know, it's just textbook. And it's kind of amazing that people didn't see through it